On the surface of an exoplanet, not far away, is the never-explored rough terrain, until now, of a double chocolate macadamia cookie. Okay, YouTubers get carried away, but this recipe has taken me almost 3 years to perfect. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I make my version of double chocolate cookies with macadamia nuts in them. These cookies are quite fudgy and loaded with chocolate. So before we get started, I'm just going to collect some eggs. There's one. Okay, chicken, I just need you to stand up. Aye. Let's see if there are any over there. Great, now I have 2 of them. For these cookies, I will just cream the butter. I am using unsalted butter and proportioning with a digital scale. Little bit too much, so I'll take some out. Get these out of the way and make room for the sugars. On display here are my favorite household sugars, commonly found at Walmart. Little bit too much, so I'll put some back. Dark brown sugar is always lumpy, which for cookies, in my view, is not a big deal, but the fewer lumps the better. White sugar is gritty and helps the brown sugar clumps break apart even more. The butter is not mixing and creaming because it is too cold. Let's microwave it. There we go. It is soft now and turning into a creamy paste. Now let's get the eggs ready. The natural ratio of yolk to white is fine, but more yolk than white is better because it makes the cookies fudgier in texture and richer in taste. I'll add back in a bit more egg white to get my total of 95 grams. The remaining egg white can be discarded or repurposed. Add in the vanilla extract. In a large bowl, I will add the all-purpose flour, salt, cornstarch, and baking soda. Don't want there to be too much, so I'll put back whatever is over the limit. There is 1 teaspoon of cornstarch, and then 1 more. Baking soda is pretty potent, so you don't need much. Now for the fun part. First I will use natural unsweetened cocoa powder, and secondly I will use Dutch processed cocoa powder. This is an admittedly unusual combination, but it works good for me. I love watching the light and dark shades mix together. Now it is time for another leading feature of this recipe, the macadamia nuts. And I like to chop them into little bits. I used to roast them, but now I think that unroasted tastes better. Now it is time to blend the dry and the wet ingredients together. Now it is time for my favorite part, the chocolate chips. I like to use 2 different types, bittersweet and semi-sweet. And the macadamia nuts will be the final touch. I always chill the dough in the fridge before baking. That way the cookies don't spread too much in the oven, and the flavors have time to meld and mature. Preheating the oven works, but it is not something I ever do. I am going to make 9 cookies at 60 grams each, my favorite size. Because the dough is cold, you can see me cutting the dough portions in half. That way they warm up a bit faster. This double chocolate macadamia cookie dough is kind of thick, so after rolling them into round shapes, they should be compressed into semi-round shapes to help them spread a bit better in the oven, even though I forgot to do that in this session. It's okay though, just a minor detail. I usually bake these cookies at 375 degrees Fahrenheit, even though my results with 350 and 400 are just as good, as long as their turnaround times are adjusted appropriately. This is my way of preparing the chips to be used for garnishing. You'll see in a bit. And there we go, the last chip. Don't they look nice and glossy on top? I guess I could have sprinkled some sea salt on top as well. It is popular. Anyway, it took me a lot of batches to get these cookies just the way I like them. Enjoy! Let's talk about cocoa powder, because it is the leading feature of this recipe. You might be wondering why I mixed the natural and the Dutch processed cocoa powder half and half in this recipe. After all, who does that? Indeed, I have not seen anyone else on the internet do so. Normally, it is a choice of either or, especially since natural cocoa powder pairs best with baking soda, which I use in this recipe, and the Dutch processed goes best with baking powder, which I did not use. So there would have to be a good reason to mix them, right? Well, chemically, I don't have a good reason, but taste-wise, I mix them because I like the taste profile they produce together. On their own, the taste of the natural cocoa powder has a strong and bitter cacao hit, while the Dutch processed powder has a smoother and creamier taste. So they are definitely not the same. This made me curious. Which type would most people like more? The natural or the Dutch? So I shared 17 sets of cookie test samples with my family and mostly coworkers, with one cookie being made with the natural cocoa powder and the other being made with Dutch processed cocoa powder. After all the votes were collected, there were 6 people who said that the Dutch processed cocoa powder tasted the best, while the remaining 11 testers said nope, the natural cocoa powder was the best. If I include myself, counting as the 18th tester, then I preferred and voted for the natural powder. But I still recognize that the Dutch processed had potential since it was distinctly richer and creamier. So for my next test, I made another batch with the natural cocoa powder and a different batch with half natural and half Dutch processed, the same as was demonstrated in this video. This time I prepared only 6 cookie test samples, but out of the previous 17 participants, these 6 sets were given to some of the most reliable testers. It was a tie this time, as 3 people basically said, nice try with the half and half, but the natural is still the best because it seems chocolatier. While the other 3 said, not so. The mix is better because the richness of the Dutch processed noticeably balances out the bitter strength of the natural. The richness is worth it. I myself remain almost undecided, as I do prefer the mix, though I think they are both good, but it really is a matter of splitting hairs here. Just as an aside, for the natural cocoa powders I tried 4 different brands, and I was hoping to discover different flavors, but instead, I think they all tasted the same. I couldn't tell the difference. They each rendered different colors though. If I had to pick a favorite, it would be the fries, because it is the darkest in color, and I find that appealing, for whatever that's worth. Here is another aside. Many batches ago, while I was overachieving, I somehow f***ed up some cookies. Not certain what I did, but I probably forgot most of the flour. Oh, the long road to success. Anyways, thanks for watching if you made it this far, and see you in the next cookie video.